ready?
Got open man, DJ Moore, end zone, touchdown! Touchdown Bears!
I am Jeff Joniak.
Blitz is on, down he goes! Brisker!
What was it like playing for Coach Ditka?
I don't want to answer any questions like that.
Pressure coming, he's in big trouble, down he goes! Montez Sweat!
And now, Bears Etc., brought to you by Miller Lite, with the voices of the Bears, Jeff Joniak and Tom Thayer.
With the opening of training camp, memories of Platteville, Wisconsin, in the days of building a champion. We walk down memory lane with one of the greats in NFL history, the Danimal. Hall of Famer Dan Hampton is part of episode 154 of the Bears Etc. podcast, and we are brought to you by Miller Lite. With Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. First Bears training camp under Ben Johnson, first week storylines. Tom, it's very simple for me. It's you know how I like to, it's called alliteration, buddy. Intensity. It's about the insistence of the details. Nothing too small. Every snap matters. It's intolerance. It's just not going to be accepted. And everybody's embracing it, the players as much as anybody. And it's important that they do in the first place. But we're enjoying the scene so far after a couple days.
Yeah, but Jeff, if you don't invest in the mental side of it, whether you're on offense and defense, and make sure that they don't have some of those occurrences that come up where everybody's not on the same page, and Ben has taken that group out and putting the next group in, since they all come with a new clean slate, that every one of these guys need equal reps to make sure their investment is paying off.
All right, we'll get an injury update and see what's going on. So far, so good. You know, Colston Loveland on the way back. Karan Amagaji with the ones at left tackle during 11-on-11 on day 2 of practice. Braxton Jones is not participating in the team practice part, but the battle underway with Ozzie Trapillo had the honors on day 1, swapped from day 1, and that battle at the backup quarterback position. Case Keenum was QB2 day 1, Tyson Bagent QB2 on day 2. So this will be going on until things start to materialize from a coaching point of view and who moves ahead. And there's many other positions. We can go down the list from third linebacker. Noah Sewell is doing outstanding, we hear. The defensive backs, no Jalen Johnson. Luther Burden of the second still doing with a soft tissue. So he has not been able to participate really since rookie minicamp.
Well, you know, if you were a sculptor, the block in front of you would still be whole because we haven't put pads on yet. So you can talk about that investment in the mental aspects of football and how well you know your assignments, so you can go out there and you can look the part. But you're not going to prove the part until pads come on Monday, because that's when football really starts. And I think we'll learn a little bit more about Ben Johnson, maybe his patience or his impatience. Learn a little bit more about the requirements from Dennis Allen, of the guys that are on the first unit or guys that are fighting for their opportunity. And so I know I sit here as of today and excited that things are underway, and I love everything I hear out of Ben. But the anticipation of Monday for me is unlike any other time in football, because that's when you're going to hear football, not necessarily from the voices of the coaches. You're going to hear football from the crack of the pads.
Zay Frazier, the rookie, cornerback, personal matter. He was excused. And defensive tackle Shamar Turner, the rookie, turned an ankle. They're still checking on the severity of that. Hopefully it's nothing that's going to be long-term, because every rep matters for these rookies to get into the rotation. As a second-round pick, a lot expected of Shamar Turner.
Yeah, and, you know, if he does have a little bit of a tweak, and then let him get that tweak out of the way before he gets into full pads. Don't come out there and limp around in no pads and then make yourself 60-70% when pads come on, because I really don't think that will do a proper service to Turner.
All right, let's listen in to head coach Ben Johnson. He is every other day at the podium as they go through training camp, and he gave us a summary on some of the things he's seeing and some of the things he's witnessing.
Yesterday, good start. Guys were excited. Effort was there. Intensity was there. It was fun to watch them fly around. I know some people enjoyed me throwing the first team out of practice. Not the case. We're on a time crunch, as you guys all know. We got 90 minutes there that first day. We're up to 105 here today, so just need to keep things moving on along there, or else other guys weren't going to be able to get their reps. So, But point is, though, we got to be on our P's and our Q's, and every minute, every rep is really valuable as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up.
Did you not like the way that was perceived out there?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Like it is what it is. You know, our guys, we got to end up executing, getting in and out of the huddle a certain way, and it wasn't that way, and so we'll be better today.
Is that what it was, just getting in and out?
Yeah,
Is that on Caleb, or is that everybody?
It's everybody. It's everybody. We're learning. We're growing. You know, there's some things from the springtime expected to carry over that was probably one we just don't have any tolerance for anymore. We got too far to go.
Do you find that they're very receptive in those moments too?
Yeah. Everyone, they know it's not good enough, so it's just keep the train moving.
With Luther, since we're not here every day during the off-season program, how much work did he get in May and June, and how much catching up is going to be involved when he is available?
Everything that our training staff is telling us we can do physically with them, we're utilizing. I know Coach Randallell's been all over them in meetings, keeping them involved. He's being quizzed nonstop. Our quarterbacks are taking them to the side, whether it's walkthroughs on their own. So he's utilizing that time as much as he can, but there's really no substitute for full speed reps. And so the sooner we get him out there, the quicker he can carve a role for himself.
Do you think it's a matter of days, weeks?
Yeah, I'm hopeful it's just a few days. You know, we're saying day to day right now. Sometimes those soft tissues you can't predict. Everyone's a little bit different. Some guys take longer than others. So, like I said, just was hopeful, and we'll keep on trucking on along.
And what have you learned about your running backs?
Shoot, we'll find out more once we get the pads on, but extremely coachable. Improvements on the tracks every single day. Just we're very detailed with where we want them to go. They're all about it. Coach Bieniemy's doing a phenomenal job. He's very demanding. He's one of the more demanding coaches I've been around. I think they're receptive to that type of coaching. I think Swift has done a great job. Come back from the summer. He's in great shape. He had some plays yesterday that weren't ideal. We might have had a guy unblocked in the hole, and yet he's able to extend it and make something happen beyond. So highly motivated group. I know the perception out there is that maybe it's not the most talented room in the world. They like to hear that noise. So we're gonna be just fine.
Coach, we know it's not a linear process, improving, but with where the team was when they left for the summer to where you saw them at yesterday, first day of training camp, was it a step back? Was it they're right where they should be?
No, I told them after the practice that I was pretty pleased. We challenged the staff the night before that we really got to pick up where we left off, and for the most part, we saw that. Defensively, we were stopping the ball on most of the plays. Offensively, we were finishing down the field and blocking for our buddies, getting connected. And I thought our pre-snap procedure, for the most part, was solid. It's not where it needs to be. It's going to continue to get better. But no, I was pleased with the first day.
And with Jalen on NFI, is he in the building rehabbing, or is he?
He is here rehabbing. That's correct.
Ben, you told us when you got here that you were going to run the Bears offense, not the Detroit Lions offense from last year or the year before. But in terms of like run-pass split, are there principles you believe in that you want to be around a certain number?
No, there are not. Every game is its own entity. And that's what I learned. I mean, I saw it for a number of years when I was in Miami. The New England Patriots were really the top of the league for so long, and each week you just didn't know. Offense and defense, they just continued to morph, and they had their opponents guessing. You didn't know what Belichick was going to pull out front-wise or coverage-wise on defense. You didn't know what McDaniels was going to do on all. He might throw it 50 times, he might run it 50 times. And standing from afar, seeing how dominant that was, I think that's a really good tactic to have. That's something that I would like to do here as well. You know, the elements play a role. Our talent plays a role. Who we're going against plays a role. It all plays a piece into the puzzle, and that's what's fun about each game week.
And from what you expressed on Tuesday, it sounded like the running game, the vision and the design of that is going to be fluid here. What's the process for you of figuring out what you want to be in that part of the game?
Yeah, we will talk about it as a staff, and that's where we got to lean on. We got a great veteran O-line coach in Dan Rochar that he's been around. He knows what good football looks like. He'll be able to hone in on what he feels like our unit up front can handle. the volume is a big deal. How much is too much? And so that's that fine line. We got to make sure we're attacking the defense and keeping them guessing, but at the same time, we got to do things that we're good at. So over the course of camp, over the next few weeks, it's really going to come together for us.
With the two tight ends that you have, are you looking at some of that Patriots tape? You brought up Bill Belichick and how dominant they were with that 12 personnel and trying to implement some of that here?
Yeah, I think you go back to what they were able to do this day and age. Each week you don't know if you're going to get base defense or nickel defense to 12 personnel, and that's kind of fun of the game too. Calling the game is what is the defense going to be in, and how can you go after them and attack them. I think 12 gives you a lot of options, particularly when you have athletic tight ends that can still block. You can line up in 11 personnel sets and spread them out, or you can get condensed on down and play big boy ball. And so that's why I think it's a challenge this day and age if you got the guys to defend.
And with DeAndre Swift, you coached him before. What seems different to you about the player you have now versus 3 years ago?
He has always been quiet. He's always been highly motivated on the inside. So there's a lot of things about him that are the same as what they've been. He's not happy with how last year went for him. Production-wise, team-wise, everything-wise. He's really motivated. He's really excited to help lead and spur this team forward. So I don't think I see a whole lot of differences from where he's been, but I see a very hungry individual.
Tom, what stood out about what he had to say early on day 2 before they went out to practice?
Just making a point of emphasis that he wasn't kicking the first unit off the field. He was just making sure everybody had equal accountability and equal reps in order to have a more clear-cut evaluation. The fact that everybody is still working on a clean slate. I thought it was interesting how he stated what the outside thoughts are about the running back position, because I do think this is a good running back position, and I think they can really make this offense better. I think we're going to see the best out of a guy like DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson and Monangai and the other guys. We're going to see how they can contribute into this offense. So, he clearly thinks how to develop a football team, and we hear it every time he's at the podium.
Yeah, I talked to DeAndre Swift as well, and it was a player that Ben Johnson coached in Detroit, so he knows him and said he showed up in great shape. He's really not happy at all how things went last season, not only from a team perspective but an individual perspective, and he called the group highly motivated. And Swift, he says, man, this guy is just so smart about getting players in a position where they're going to succeed in a matchup. And that's the part that we can't wait to see. And we won't see until the games. And the delineation, much like we knew when Bill Belichick's defense would show up, we wouldn't know what they were going to do other than they always found the number one player, the number one weapon, and tried to erase him and let everything else fall into place. Ben Johnson thinks about the same way from an offensive perspective, it appears.
Yeah, but one thing about specifically the running back position, it's not going to be about the big plays. It's going to be about the little requirements. Are you willing to stand in there and take on a linebacker blitzing when you have him as your pass blocking responsibility? You break the huddle, you go to the line of scrimmage, it's third and an ugly 2. Are you willing to do what it takes in order to get that 2.5 yard and get the ball beyond the first down marker? Those are the things that are really going to be have a lot in the deciding factor of where these running backs are going to fall into play, because Ben mentioned it from the first day he got here. And yeah, all these running backs are capable of juking a linebacker in the hole and going for 20, catching a screen out, reading the blocks in front of you and turning it into 60. But what about the dirty work? Are you willing, capable, and able to do the dirty work? And that will be a deciding factor.
Calling all small businesses. Your business can be featured at a Bears home game. Apply for the Small Business All-Pros program at chicagobears.com. Brought to you by PNC. And good news, Chicago, United Airlines is getting brand new planes with all the bells and whistles like Bluetooth connectivity, screens at every seat, room for everyone's roller bag. United, proud to fly the Chicago Bears, and you too. Few in Bears history have played with so much pride about wearing that uniform than your old teammate Dan Hampton. Kind enough to take some time to visit about his career, how he sees the Bears, and all the usual verbiage that comes from a guy who could speak as well as anybody about a lot of things and get you fired up. It is Dan Hampton, our sit-down with the legendary figure for the Chicago Bears. He is Daniel Oliver Hampton. Yep, DOH, the Pro Football Hall of Famer, inducted and elected in 2002. Dan, welcome to the program. And it seems like yesterday.
And how many classes have I seen, since 02? Well, 23 now. And, I got to see, of course, Richard go in 11, and then Jimbo Covert. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago that Jumbo went in. And it really is kind of a fitting time of year to be talking about it, because, like I said, if Tom remembers, I think it was in 1988, Ditka was inducted. We were in Platteville training camp. Tom, you remember this?
It was our inter-squad game. Yeah.
Anyway, we stopped the game and we were sitting down, and they broadcast like a live feed of Ditka's speech. And it's 98 degrees out there, and we're practicing, and he's back in Canton getting inducted. So I know it's been a bizarre, set of circumstances. But the one thing is, as you brought it up, Jeff, the induction of Mongo, which was, kind of in a bizarre way, that was just a year ago. But the sequence of all these different events over the last 20 plus years, it really has been, it's been pretty wild.
Yeah, pretty wild. It's kept that Super Bowl victory in the spotlight for decades and decades. And I know the 40th anniversary, Tommy, is coming up here on Alumni Weekend before the Bears host the Minnesota Vikings on Monday Night Football. So, again, we will get to re-embrace what you guys accomplished in the most punishing way, taking care of business over the course of the 1985 season on both sides of the ball, Tommy.
Yeah, Hamp, I think a lot about the 85 team because growing up in Chicago, it was legendary to me before I ever showed up. And I hear a lot about the speech that you gave on the plane coming back from San Francisco after the loss of the NFC Championship game out there. Can you fill us in a little bit who weren't on that plane about what your message was and how you feel it resonated to that group?
And again, and see, this is kind of interesting that, you came in that year. You were playing in the USFL. You came in. So you didn't have any prologue. You weren't, didn't you come in the 85 season?
Yes.
Okay. So did the Fridge. So did Kevin Butler. I mean, it was a lot of the key members of that team. They had kind of walked in and said, wow, this is pretty cool. We go to a Super Bowl and we win it, They didn't have any, of the saga that we had went through all those years prior, especially like Walter. Those were dark days at the end of the 70s. The Bears were not very good. And even when I got to Chicago in 79, we made the playoffs. Then we didn't for 2, 3, 4 years. And those were the years that it was kind of like make and break. And, of course, by the time we had gotten to that point where you bring up coming back from the championship game after getting our ass kicked, there's a point in life where you just kind of just say, I will not accept this. And I use the phrase all the time, and you probably remember it, refuse to lose. It was at that point, I was just, Mongo and I were grousing about the fact that, we had a pretty damn good year. And yet we get to the precipice where we could kick the door open and we don't. And I just know this, look back a couple of years ago, the Bears had a good team and everybody thought, oh, here we go. We're going back to the Super Bowl. They lose in the playoffs and then the whole team kind of rolls up. So I didn't want that to happen. And I went to every player and kind of grabbed him and looked him in the eye and I said, make up your mind. Make up your mind, because this is it's easy to make your mind up in September, but you got to make it up in January because that's when the work has to be done, the next 6-7 months of preparation. And I wanted everybody to realize that it's easy to go, this is our year. Yeah. We're going to do this and that in September. No, you got to do it way in advance and start laying the groundwork. And, I got to tell you, everybody did. We worked in a feverish manner to where we not only, and Tommy, you remember this through the 87 and Jody, see, that was part of the deal. And everybody goes, why are you so hard on the team today? Because there was a point when, and this is what everybody, like Scotty Scheffler, everybody right now, who's the greatest? Everybody points at that point in the middle 80s, who was the greatest team? Everybody pointed at the Bears. And it wasn't by happenstance. It was because a lot of special people had a lot of commitment and they did a lot of hard work. And, that was where it all kind of was, the Rubicon. After that game, a lot of teams, they get close and then they fold up and blow away. I didn't want that to happen. Walter didn't, Singletary. We didn't want that to happen. And, so far, so good. It worked out the way we wanted it to.
Hamp, I was such a fan of the Bears because I grew up in this area, and I was such a huge fan of you and McMichael, and I was intimidated by you guys in the same sense. So I was playing with a guy in the USFL that forewarned me, hey, man, when you go look at Hampton and McMichael at practice, there they are rolling up their sleeves. They're getting ready. You better be ready when you go there. So I didn't go in there naively thinking that this was going to be an easy journey. But I was thinking back, what questions have I not asked Dan Hampton over the time I got to know him? And I never heard a story of the first time you met Ditka and the first time you met Mongo. Do you remember both of those instances?
In an abstract way, Ditka, he was hired like 2 weeks after the season, and the media covered it so much that by the time we actually got to, shake hands, it was like I already knew him. It was like, I was very well acquainted with not only who he was, but how he operated. And I got to tell you, from the first day, I loved Ditka because he refused to lose. He had a burning desire, and you know it, and I know it. Was he the most innovative offensive coordinator you ever saw? No. Was he a brilliant strategist when it came to calling play? No. But he had a superior ability to motivate people, to organize a team attitude where it was us against the world, that type of mentality. But the other part of it was he was an amazing talent evaluator. Now, you came in and you supplanted the right guard that had been there as a starter for a year or two. And the reason you came in is they wanted to get better at that position, evidently. And so that's what happened. So, Ditka always had an eye for not only talent, but how to motivate that talent. And that's all any player could ever ask. Not everybody is going to be as brilliant as what Ben Johnson evidently is. I mean, this guy, his offenses have scored 175 touchdowns over the last 3 years. Never been done before in the NFL. That wasn't who Ditka was, but Ditka was so instrumental in our great success. Now, the story about Mongo. So in 1978, playing at Arkansas, it was the year after a guy named Brad Shear, who had won the Outland Trophy as a defensive tackle for Texas. He had won it, and then the next year I was the player of the year and blah, 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 but I didn't win the Outland Trophy. And so, you always have this, well, this guy did, was recognized to be a better player than I, whatever. Well, the next year, Mongo, he was the player of the year in the Southwest Conference. And so I was very, aware of these guys. Now, Brad Shearer was a member of the Bears, but he was constantly injured, and he knew Steve intimately. And, we had some conversations about Steve before the Bears asked me to go pick up Steve. Now, I went to pick him up at the airport, and I had like a speaking engagement. I told him, I said, look, I've got to go do this event. It was in Morris, Illinois, quite a ways. So on the way down there, we kind of, talked a little bit, yada, yada. Anyway, I did my event, blah, blah, blah. When it was over, I went back to the table, and he had about 10 people around, all these shot classes, and they already had plans to go to some club. So it didn't take long for Steve to acclimate himself to Chicago. It was a partnership in a lot of different ways where we were very similar in our style of play, which is violent. We wanted to be something. We wanted to be special, and we knew that it's just like everything in life. I mean, nobody's going to give it to you. You got to go out there and make it happen. And he and I, and even, Mike Hartenstein and Richard Dent, through that early part of the 80s, we had grown up, hearing about the Steel Curtain and Mean Joe Green and the Purple People Eaters and Alabama and all this. We wanted to be like that. We wanted everybody to talk about us like that. In a big picture way, it was kind of like, clockwork. We had a plan. We had goals. We wanted to accomplish certain things. And by the time you showed up in 85, we were kind of well down the road to, kind of being, the guys we wanted to be.
NFL Defensive MVP in 1982, before all the fun really got rolling, and then a 6-time All-Pro, 4 Pro Bowlers, 57 sacks in 12 seasons. But I think people might forget that you were as versatile as any defensive lineman could possibly be. And in that 85 season, if I'm correct, you played half the season inside, half the season outside. Is that correct? And
yes,
was that a challenge for you? Did you care, or it was just for the good of the team? And where did you think your best position was, inside or outside?
You have to, the backstory through all this is all the knee operations that I had to go through. And by 80, I think it was 83, there was a new technique, arthroscopic procedure, that when they would go in and remove the torn cartilage, which over the course of time, I had 16 operations like this, but they would remove the cartilage that was, unstable, but then they would grind around on the bone and make the bone bleed. And then that bone would create a certain pseudo callus that would be almost like, pseudo cartilage. And anyway, this was the guy that pioneered this whole arthroscopic technique was Lanny Johnson in Lansing, Michigan. And Walter had him work on his knees a number of times as well. But the problem was that it wasn't like you get the cartilage out and then you go in the weight room and start lifting again. You had to be on crutches they wanted you to be on the crutches for 8 weeks and stay off of it and have it non-weight bearing. Just like, this kid, J.J. McCarthy up in Minnesota last year. He had to put it, essentially had his leg bent on a little scooter to where you allow the joint to recover without any weight-bearing, instances. So all of the, and so, I wouldn't be able to start, kind of even weightlifting until May or June, and then I wouldn't run until training camp started. And this is all by the time, Tom showed up. Not being able to prepare in the off season the way I used to, it became a challenge. Now, your question was about end and tackle. Well, after a number of these, knee operations, it's just the toll it takes on you. You're not as quick, not as flexible, not as fluid, not as nifty, not as as dynamic. So by their late 80s, I knew that I needed to be inside where power was more of an advantage, and I didn't have as quick, takeoff as I did 5 years earlier, yada, yada. But to make the defense better, they felt like making me a defensive end again and, supplanting Hartenstein and putting Fridge in. So it'd be Fridge and Mongo inside and me and Dent outside. It would create the best of all worlds. Quite honestly, I mean, they didn't ask. They just, Buddy Ryan said, you're going to do this. And I said, fine. But, so much of the time I played inside on the nose in the 46. So I still got a lot of that. But the point being is, it was for the common good, for the good of the team. All that. I played outside again for 3 or 4 years until, Fridge had gotten so heavy he was pretty ineffective inside. So I moved back inside, and that's when Trace Armstrong came, and he was playing left end. So there was a rhyme and reason for all of that. The point about me being able to do that flexible, there is some differences, but the whole thing is still, it's about reading blocks, having leverage and technique and yada, 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 and getting after people. So, I didn't think it was that big a deal, but I'm just glad it was able to occur the way it did because, and I think you guys have heard this, but real quick, I'll tell you the story real quick because it's really interesting. Don Pearson was the writer that was supposed to essentially make a case for certain players to get into the Hall of Fame. And I retired in 90 and 95. I was up and it didn't happen. 96 didn't happen. By 98 or 99, I had already kind of fallen back into the pool of guys that didn't make it. And I had kind of thought, well, that's the way the cookie crumbles. And then one day I got a phone call from a guy named John Turney. And he said he was a cruncher. And I said, what? He said, I'm a number cruncher. And I had to call you. And I said, why? He said, well, because every year I do breakdowns on all the players. In fact, like Jim Kelly, the quarterback that went in the Hall of Fame in 2002 when I did. He said, I compared Jim Kelly's numbers over his season, his career, each season to Terry Bradshaw and Roger Staubach and blah, 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 yada, yada. And I said, okay, so what? He goes, are you aware of the fact that the 12 years that you played for the Bears, your defense was number one in every category, essentially in everything? And I said, no, I didn't know that. He goes, yeah. And this is back when there was fax machines. And I had a fax machine. And I said, could you fax me this? And the guy faxed. I sent that to Don Pearson. And I essentially said, John Turney said, this has never happened before. Mean Joe Green, Merlin Olsen, Randy White, blah, blah, blah. He said, in other words, what the hell are you doing? Why haven't you, first, why haven't you done your homework? And number two, now that I'm done your homework, why don't you, present it? So essentially, I heard this from some of the guys in the Hall of Fame that year I was still in the pool and they passed this paper up, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, the long-term point is, no matter where I played, I just wanted to be a part of trying to make it special. And I didn't care what position, wherever I had to be. But I kind of have to say mission accomplished. You always want to be, the best, the number one, blah, blah, blah. And for that to happen over the 12 years, that is pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was number one in fewest points, number one in total yards, number one in rushing yards, number one in rushing touchdowns, and the most sacks in the NFL.
Sacks.
Yeah, from 79 to 90, the Bears.
That was the one in Mongo. I mean, that's all we talked about. When I first got to the Bears, I didn't realize, in college, they'd only throw the ball 10, 12 times a game, so pass rush was kind of like not as important. I didn't realize how important, and of course today, sacks, certain players get 12 sacks and now they're going to make $30 million a year. And, but way back when, and again, I guess maybe we're part of that dynamic, making it so, such a prominent statistic. We set the NFL record in '84, and then with 72, still has never been beaten. And then the next year we had 66 or 68 or something. So we had a pretty good run.
Hey, Hamp, you specifically, though. So Vince Tobin comes in after Buddy Ryan leaves, and you guys statistically have a better season than an 85. But if Dan Hampton doesn't meet a young Buddy Ryan, do you become the player you did? Because the discipline that he put on you guys, no matter where your stardom was at the time. And I remember walking out there and seeing you guys doing up downs every practice going, God, I'm so glad I'm not a defensive player. But you think of the discipline that Buddy Ryan gave you specifically as a Hall of Famer. Do you accomplish that if you have a less, hard-nosed military background coach like Buddy?
And Daryl Hopp, the defensive line coach, he was real quick story. So I'm a rookie. This is about, October. And our defensive ends, they were older and they wouldn't practice. And so I'd had to practice every down, every play, blah, blah, blah. And now we're driving a sled around, and everybody else on the practice field, they're like, talking. The offensive line is down there pointing at dummies, blah, blah. We're driving a sled back and forth. And I start yelling down there, hey, buddy, make those son of a bitches do something, blah, blah, blah. And we keep driving a sled. Anyway, about 20 minutes later, they blow the whistle. We're down there. We're in team drills. And, I do like 8 or 10 plays in the team drill, and I come out and I'm drinking some water. And Buddy comes up behind me and he goes, Big Rook, he goes, you need to shut the hell up. And I said, why's that? He said, the hardest job in football is rushing the passer in the fourth quarter when you got a lead. It's up to you to win the game for us. The offense gets us a lead, then we have to do our part and rush the passer and stop them and not allow them to come back and win. You understand? And I said, yes, sir. He said, don't be yelling ever again. And he walked away. And he basically, nobody had ever explained it. Nobody had ever told me that, but he's so true. It was so true. How important is it for the defensive line to close the game out? And that's why he wanted us to be extraordinarily, conditioned to be able to do that in the fourth quarter. And obviously, do you remember the game in Cincinnati where I think we played 80 plays and it was 100 degrees on the field? Yep. And I remember saying to myself, my God, I'm not in shape. But people were puking right and left and all that. But I had to rush the passer like 60 times that day. And, you're never in as good a shape as you want. But, that was who Buddy was. He wanted to make sure that we all understood there's a method to his madness about how he wants to go about achieving certain things. And let me just tell you this. So at the very end of, with Buddy, I went down to see him and I said, so Buddy, you were part of a lot of great teams. He was the defensive line coach on the 69 Jets, who Namath gets the credit, but it was the defensive line. They flustered Johnny Unitas into a horrible game. That's why the Jets won. But then he went to Minnesota. He was the defensive line coach for the Purple People Eaters, the Ellen Page, Lawson, Carl Eller. He was the defensive. And then when he came to Chicago, he became the coordinator. He had the number one defense here. 3 guys off that defensive line in the Hall of Fame. Then when he went to Philadelphia, he had the number one defense. They became, you remember, Tom, they were brutal. The Philadelphia Eagles with Jerome Brown and Reggie White and all those guys, they were badasses. And then he got fired and he took the job in Houston. 1 year, look it up. It was the number one defense in football. And I told Buddy, I said, this is unbelievable. You have had the number one defense. I said, what was your best coaching job? And he couldn't, he had 2 bouts of cancer and 2 bouts of chemo. And, he was really struggling. But essentially I made out, he said, hey, he goes, Korea, that was my best job. I said, Korea, what are you talking about? He said, I was an 18-year-old sergeant, and our sergeant got killed, and they appointed me to basically be the leader, the troop leader. And he said, I had them kids in Korea for 6 months, and I got them all home safe. He said that was my best coaching job. Wow. And that is who Buddy was. He was the greatest.
I never heard that story. Wow. This podcast is brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer partner of your Chicago Bears. Tastes like Miller Time, Chicago. Go to MillerLite.com/BearsPod to find delivery options near you. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Are aches, pains, or injuries keeping you on the sidelines? Athletico's movement experts are here to help you turn your setbacks into comebacks and create a personalized game plan for your recovery. With no prescription or referral needed, Athletico Physical Therapy is where your comeback story begins. Athletico is proud to be the official physical therapy partner of the Chicago Bears. You analyze the Bears on WGN Radio with Eddie Obradovich. What's your outlook as we wrap this up?
Boy, I tell you what, it's hard not to get as optimistic as everybody else. Defense, there's a certain level of violence that you can win, even if you don't have the most talented players. But, I mean, you just maul people. After a while, it takes a toll. On offense, the same effect, but in a schematic sense. I think it is amazing how much Ben Johnson has already impacted this franchise. And let's go back. The Bears had a list of 20 people, and I mocked him. I said, you didn't make a list of 20 people when you married your wife. You didn't have 20 girls and go down the list. You identified who you want, and you go get them. And they didn't really do that. But guess what? Ben Johnson actually did that to them. He came to them and said, look, I'm your man. I'm the guy that you need. And you know why? Because for so many years, a lot of decisions were made by the Bears, the coaches, the general manager. And I'd say, what the hell are you? I haven't said that once. Not once. Everything they're doing, I heartily concur and agree with. Now, all that being said, there has to be, you can apply, the cure, the medicine, but they got to take it. The offensive line has got to come together. The quarterback has got to understand how important fundamentals were. And this kid, he was off the charts without fundamentals. Okay, that was his calling card. The extracurricular, making plays extend after the play breaks down, all that. But how much better can he and the offense be with him being fundamentally sound and with motion and with all the nuances of a very sophisticated offense? I'll just throw this out there real quick. I remember my rookie year. It was Bill Walsh's rookie year in San Francisco. And I remember hearing people talk about how Bill Walsh was kind of like a maniac about all the little things, about the checkdowns and the snap count and things that normally people wouldn't really care or think about that much. All those, guess what? How it blossomed over the next decade, and they won 4 Super Bowls. So I'm hoping the same thing is occurring with Ben Johnson. Now the defense, Dennis Allen, he's got the pelts on the wall. I think he had a top 9 defense the last 4 years. So, it's going to be good. It's going to be better than last year. Will it be the number one defense? Maybe not. Who cares? But the point being is our offense has been so bad that, it's modern football. As my buddy Ed Obradovich always says, the rules tell you it's about offense and throwing the ball and scoring points. And we haven't been, kind of playing the card game the proper way. Ben Johnson will get us not only in a position to play the game a proper way, but he has been so dominant. I got to tell you, if he was able to do that with Jared Goff, set back, he's got a special talent. Let's see what happens. We'll see you soon, guys.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate
Thanks.
it. Talk about a few things. That interview was fun, no question. The guy can turn a phrase like nobody else. Love listening to him. His passion still for the Chicago Bears, you feel it. Certainly he does it on radio for WGN Radio. And every time he talks with us, there's something about the team that gives him a thought, a passionate view, because he wants this team to win just like everybody else.
Well, it tells you a lot about him and his Hall of Fame career. He came here in '79 and he saw some of the more difficult times of the Bears, but then he saw that accelerator where the elevator started going up to the Super Bowl team that it became after getting beaten in the 1984 NFC Championship game. And I knew a lot about Dan Hampton before I ever got here because I was a fan of the Bears. And I had some teammates in the USFL that forewarned me about Danimal, about the football player, about that type of guy. And when I came to the Bears, I was in awe of Hamp and Steve McMichael. And I was an offensive lineman, and I shouldn't be in awe of them. Yeah. But I admired them. I admired their dedication to being a professional football player, their dedication to being a Bear, and the dedication to wanting to work to be great. And that's what I really admire about that group of guys.
We're brought to you by PNC, official bank of the Bears. This I didn't know, and we didn't have time to get into it with him, but did you know about his childhood falling out of a tree?
Yes.
So the doctors advised him to give up sports.
Yes.
So he started playing instruments. Get a load of this. He immersed himself. He played 6 different instruments.
Yep.
Bass guitar, classical guitar, drums, saxophone, piano, organ. And played the bass for a rock band, saxophone, in the marching band. Obviously, he played music afterwards with some of his old teammates as well, including McMichael. But I had no recollection that he was that musically gifted.
Do you know, Jeff, that he was in the high school band, and at halftime of his high school football games, he didn't go into the locker room. He played saxophone in the marching band
in full uniform.
and then went back and played the second half.
Oh my gosh.
And that's some of the star qualities that I admire about him, because he took pride in that. And I think it probably gave the rest of the band members pride in the fact that here's a guy that turns into a college defensive player of the year, is also playing saxophone at halftime. I really admire that about him, and I wish I could have done that.
When you talk about his era of players, and he was named to the 1980s All-Decade team, there were only 4 defensive linemen on that team. Reggie White, Randy White, Howie Long, and Dan Hampton. Wow. Each of those guys, you had a block in your career.
Yep.
This is a question. You're going to have to give it some thought. How would you rank them in difficulty of dealing with as a blocker? All 4, because you practice every day against Hamp. You played Reggie White. You played Randy White. You played Howie Long. Each of them a little bit different in their style.
Each of them. It's Reggie White, number 1. He's the most powerful, gifted, strong, play anywhere defensive lineman probably in the history of the NFL. then Hamp, because he gave you a unique quality where he was an all-pro on the outside, all-pro on the inside, but it was his stance. He used his length as an asset. So if you were a short-armed offensive lineman, you were never going to be able to get your hands to Hampton because of his stance and the length of his arm. He would always create separation by the time you were getting out of your stance. And then there's a lot of similarities between Randy White and Howie Long. They both were extremely dedicated. They were great players. There's a lot of similarities in their style and their stance and their ability and their commitment. So it'd be Reggie Hamp, and then Randy and Howie would be kind of on the same tier.
It's kind of interesting, and I didn't prep you for that, so that's
no.
You didn't need to. Flashbacks, right? You got. You have flashbacks.
I played against Reggie in college in the USFL and the NFL. I saw and felt what type of guy he was, and so it's no. I don't feel like I'm slighting the rest of those guys either, because they would probably be in an agreement with me.
Mm-hmm. When Hamp had he had a lot of knee surgeries. I mean, he mentioned 16. Probably some broken bones in there as well. But when he didn't play, his 27 games he didn't play in his career, the Bears were 10-17 in those games. When he played, 157, 103, and 54.
Hey, we started the season 4-0 one year. Hamp got hurt, and we won one game the rest of the year.
Oh,
so his impact, not only in the practice locker room, on the game day locker room, and also on the game day field, it was significant.
Hey, Bears fans, Steinhoffels is a proud partner of the Chicago Bears and now open in Orland Park. Steinhoffels is Chicagoland's furniture and mattress leader with the largest selection to fit every style and budget, and is 100% employee-owned. Shop in-store and online at steinhoffels.com. All right, that's going to wrap us up for our podcast. Now we're in two-a-days, Tom. It's 2 per week. We're in two-a-days, and we're only too happy to do it. Lots to bring to you every week, and I know Tom's excited about it, excited about what's ahead, and so stick with us every week for the rest of the season through February, we hope, as well. Thanks to our guest, Hall of Famer Dan Hampton. For Tom Thayer, I'm Jeff Joniak. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please subscribe now on the Chicago Bears official app, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Bear down, everybody.